All right, my name's Ruben Arebalo, and before I get going, the very first thing I wanted to do was thank the Dental Laboratory Association of Texas for putting on this event in the first place. I'm a little nervous up here, but don't let that make you think I'm not super excited to be here. One of the things I love about this industry is trade shows where we could come together, connect, share ideas, and all grow with our commitment to this industry. So I thank all of you for being here, because in my years in dental, going to these trade shows, I learned so much through conversations with each and every one of you. So thank you for being here. I'll talk a little bit about myself, my background. So this shows me starting in the model shop. And when I put this slide together, I actually had to go back and think about when I started in dental. I actually started in the dental industry in a different area than dental technology. So my hometown is Santa Maria, California, born and raised there. And I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. So, like most kids, I went to the junior college there. I passed one class in my first 6 classes I attempted and was expelled in less than 2 semesters. And my parents said, get a job or get out. So I went and got a job. So I went to the largest employer in our town. Is a company called Denmat at the time. Well, Denmat owns Rembrandt toothpaste. So my first introduction to the dental industry was driving a forklift and filling orders for toothpaste shipments. Well, Denmat sold that about 3 months into my career in dental. And they told me, hey, tomorrow you're going to go over to the other side called compounding. So I went over to compounding. Well, compounding, you actually make the toothpaste in the mouthwash. So that was a real fun job. I really enjoyed that. Got to work with some machines, mixers, learn how to do all that. But I hated the menthols when they'd get in your eyes. It was terrible. You'd be crying for hours. And did that job for about 4 months because I had sold the toothpaste brand. They were done manufacturing it. The contract was up. Go in, they tell me, tomorrow you're going to go to the lab. And I turned around to my boss at the time and I said, what the hell's a lab? So I had no idea what dental technology was when I entered this industry at 19. Show up at the lab, and they throw me in the model shop, actually pin and die. Never even been in there before. And I lasted there 2 hours. Said, man, this is going to be a complete failure. So the manager at the time knew me from making toothpaste, and apparently I had impressed him because he took me straight from pin and die for 2 hours into quality control. So I broke into the dental industry, or dental technology industry, in the quality control department. So I'm checking somebody else's work, and I have no idea even what they're doing. But I enjoyed it. It challenged me. It kept me excited. I decided to learn everything there possibly was to do in the laboratory. I'll be honest, I have never sat down at a bench and spent a part-time day of 8 hours either waxing or finishing a case. I've done some waxing, I've done some finishing, but I've never been a bench technician. But I love this industry. I love the laboratory setting. I've told myself since I joined Preet, if I ever left Preet, I would go back to the dental lab because the chaos is exciting to me. Everything that goes on in there, man, there is nothing better than feeling the pressure of trying to get a 10-unit case out at 5:05 when FedEx left at 5. It's exciting to me. I love it, but I learned everything there was to do in the lab. And along that way, about 3 years later, I get this email, and this email is just a photo, and they asked, hey, do you know what this photo is? It was a recruiting company. I said, no idea what it was. Well, it was a CAD/CAM bar, but I had no idea what it was. We didn't do any implants in the laboratory I was in. But somehow the company Preet still wanted to interview me for whatever reason. I have no idea. I interview with Preet. I take on the job, and I've been with them for 13 years, but this is how much I knew about Preet when I started. So Preet specializes in removable attachments, implant components, but at the time it was really geared towards removable. Well, I came from a cosmetic veneer laboratory. So about 2 weeks after taking the job, if you guys know my boss, Chris, he's a great guy. He's been here many times. So 2 weeks after I had started with Preet, his office was upstairs. I'm running up, and I say, hey, so we're having this conversation. He says something about specializing in removable. And I'm only filling orders at the time, so I had no idea what he was talking about. I said, what's removable? That's how much I knew about Preet. So I reinvented myself at Preet in the beginning through partial denture attachments, removable overdenture attachments. And then we started going into implants and implant components. And one of the first things we did with the implants was open up our CAD design center, our Prism center. So I went from treatment planning and helping out with removable cases to designing overdenture bars and hybrid bars. So had to reinvent myself again. Then we really got into implant components, and I went from the Prism Center as my main focus to being a technician and help support implant cases. Everything along the way. So reinvented myself again. And then 2020 came along. And there is a lot to know about 2020. So we decided it was time we wanted to introduce something new within CAD to the industry with implants. So we were going to develop our new library. We're going to take it. We had a game plan in place. The only thing we couldn't do internally was develop libraries for the CAD applications. So we set up some third parties, and they were going to help us program all these files for our new library that we had all these great ideas for. And then March 2020 happened. Changed everybody, environment, never seen before. So all those third parties had other priorities all of a sudden that we were going to use them to help develop these libraries. Well, we were halfway into this product development. We couldn't stop. So let's see, I've taken on removable attachments, Prism, implant components. Hey, why not take on a library? Let me tell you, 2020 was the most challenging year I've had in this industry. But what we did in those challenges and what we've learned through them, we can do a lot more than we did before. We are better because of how hard 2020 was, and hopefully everything we've learned through 2020 in the development of all these CAD libraries will continue from beyond there. So, challenges, changes, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, we know about changes that happen all the time in our regular life. We could talk about taking a taxi or using your phone to schedule an Uber, right? Uber's taking over, they come in, they disrupt the industry. The reason they disrupt the industry is because they know that value is determined by the human experience, right? They did something, they created a value that the taxi services could not. That changed the industry. Talk about Blockbuster to Netflix. And yes, I do remember going to Blockbuster, and I do remember different way to determine what was valuable to the consumer, the end user. They changed the human experience in how we watch movies. So we talk about dentistry. Where is the value in dentistry? There's segments along the way within dental technology, the clinician relationship, but ultimately to me, the value is still determined by the human experience and the patient that's in the chair and how we could best serve that patient. Because everything trickles down. Are there any dentists in the room, by the way? Okay, good. But just kidding. In all reality, I ask that because I like to know my audience and who we're talking to. But we can talk about value, right? The patient feedback and testimonials is still going to be the number one marketing component a dental office has. So, do you want a dentist going out and telling 10 of their friends how terrible the work was? Or do you want a patient going out and telling the 2 friends how great it was and showing it off? Dentist gets more work, laboratory gets more work, everybody's happy, everyone's growing, everyone's thriving. So, talk about some of the current challenges within the dental technology industry. This is from LMT's 2020 State of the Industry edition last year. And this was before COVID, so some of these might be amplified from where they were even a year ago. But 42% of laboratory operators said price cutting competition was their biggest challenge. Keeping up with the larger laboratories was 42% as well. Rise of corporate dentistry and group practices, more downward pressure, more demand. Say, qualified employees. That's a number one thing I hear all the time is, where do you find technicians? Well, we know the resources producing technicians are declining. We have less dental technology schools, so we have to grow technicians somewhere. They're going to grow from within. We have to train them. Selecting and incorporating, managing new digital technologies. 28%. But everything on that slide, pretty much everything on that slide, can be an opportunity from incorporating digital technologies in the laboratory. So again, I say challenges or opportunities. Challenges are painful, but opportunities are great. If you find that opportunity from a challenge, every challenge creates an opportunity in my opinion. And if you can execute on that opportunity, you're going to increase either your own or somebody else's value. So you could expand your dentist or client base. You can say getting more business from current customers. We just talked about incorporating technologies in the laboratory. Well, to get more from a current customer, you probably have to offer more to that current customer. Cost cutting through better operating efficiencies, applying technology using the tools that it can provide us. Investing in digital technology. Again, there's a common theme here. How can we use the tools around us to increase value? Talk about the future of the dental lab business now. It's from Matt Morgan. The future of the dental lab relationship will require labs to be better business partners by providing additional value. Labs will need to provide solution-driven resources rather than just restoration work. What are you doing beyond delivering a crown, a partial? And how does that affect not only your dentist's value, but again, the patient's value? So, you can survive or thrive. That's one statement that's used often. You can also say, another one we see is either grow or die, unfortunately. So, online opportunities. Are you using the internet, social media, and online marketing? Especially right now. That is extremely important with less face-to-face interaction right now. Providing education and training to your accounts. Be a learning resource. Technical support and communication. All of this affects the experience and the relationship you're building with your clients. Extreme customer service. This is huge to me. At Preet, we focus a lot on the experience we provide, especially on the customer service side of things. I can tell you, I will not use certain services if they don't provide the customer service I demand. Building relationships. You need to be a trusted resource and differentiating your lab, your products and service. When you differentiate, that's where the value proposition is, and that's the value you create in the relationship you have with your clients. So some solutions or some questions that ask to get to some of these solutions is, how can we create more efficiency for your practice? How can we help boost your revenue? And how can we support your staff? kind of some of the things of the future might look like. We're going to continue to see more digital. We're going to see new materials being used in these applications. Modelless dentistry. We're already seeing some of that today with intraoral scanning and just going to final crown seating. Greater focus on productivity and profitability, being able to find outsourced partners that you can work with on different services that you cannot do internally. More focus on education by labs. I hear this more and more. The relationship has shifted from a doctor demanding something to a doctor wanting to learn what materials are out there. That's coming from the technicians now. Fewer laboratories, lower prices. Again, let's start identifying some different opportunities. So again, from LMT 2020, State of the Industry though. To me, this is exciting. When I look at this, we got 21% say it was booming, 40% say it's good. That's over 50%. And unfortunately, if it's slow or stable, that might create opportunities for those that are excited and seeing the challenges and attacking them. Talk about current crown and bridge workload and future outlook. This is big when we start getting into the CAD/CAM applications we're going to start showing here in a second. Current workload, booming or good, again, 63%. Versus conventional crown and bridge right now, 7%, 32%. That's still good. There's still an area there. 5-year outlook, extremely bright when it comes to digital crown and bridge work. Conventional, also bright. So different market segments, different areas where you can find value, where you could grow. The growth of digital impressions, this is in crown and bridge. Crown and Bridge labs accepting digital impressions has grown in 5 years from 37 to 57. And full service labs has grown 72 to 82. And this slide is important because while these labs are accepting these intraoral scans, on the clinician side, the market isn't even there yet. It's there and there's options out there, but only 19% of clinicians right now are using intraoral scanning to send impressions. How is that going to grow, and how do you prepare for that? What resources, technologies do you need to invest in? And going back to those technicians, what type of technicians do you need to start growing now to meet those demands that are coming? So let's talk about another opportunity, and we'll get into the libraries now, and let's talk about restoring implants. Believe it or not, I still see these staple implants. I still see these blade implants come by us. I don't see new cases, but we still service them. Subperiosteals. But everything today you're pretty much going to receive is going to be in the form of the root form implant and how to restore that patient. Trends in implant dentistry. 5 million implants are placed every year. And that number is only going to continue to grow from the baby boomers and Gen X. The number of people with missing teeth is going to increase to more than 200 million. And right now, the treatment option of choice is going to continue to grow, and that's putting an implant in place of the missing tooth or teeth rather than cutting down natural dentition. And this is straight from the American Academy of Implant Dentistry. So, to me, that sounds like an opportunity. But now's the time to start gearing up for this increase. Not when it happens. Not when it's 5 o'clock or 5:05 and FedEx left at 5. There are a ton of different implants being placed. I think the current count of US implant manufacturers is near 200. As a technician, we need to know what those are and what options are available to restore them. You got your standard internal hex, your external hex implants, Keystone, some old Calcitech splines are still out there, Astra, Straumann. Those are just the big guys. One of the key things we do at Preet is we offer a service where we could ID implants. We are IDing implants probably 30 to 40 implant IDs every day of people calling us, what is this and what's available to restore it? Again, value, opportunities. And then once you identify the implant, how do you restore it? What's available for it? What type of abutments are out there? Was that planned when the implant was placed? Or is this a patient who moved after the implant was placed 5 years ago and now has the money to restore this implant? Does the new clinician know what the plan was 5 years ago? It's our job to help them along the way. How can we select the right abutment to get to the end result that the patient's going to want, that patient experience when they want to go show everybody their new smile? Digital dentistry has helped us a ton. From implant placement, this helps with the treatment plan if everyone's involved. Place the implants, know what restorative options are available ahead of time, plan for the end in mind. Again, CAD/CAM, helping with placement, using the technologies around us to increase efficiencies, increase accuracies, have predictable results for that patient. And it's come a long way. You can use technologies to go from a patient who comes in with remaining natural teeth to having a brand new smile within hours now through digital applications. There's a lot of these applications out there. How are we using them? How are we using technology as a tool to benefit the patient? And what value is the patient getting out of this tool of digital technology? So I'm going to introduce a challenge here, and it might be too soon, but as I was preparing this lecture, I started thinking about something. We've been doing digital dentistry for about 20 years now. In fact, the next slide will show that it's been around for 20 years. So I challenge the question, is this a digital model department, or is it just a model department now? I'll present the challenge. Are we doing digital dentistry, or are we doing dentistry? I will say this, though. I don't tell somebody, hey, I'm going to make a call on my smartphone. I tell them, hey, I'm making a call on my phone. And that's where I believe we're at with dentistry. So I've been in this industry 17 years. This has been 2 decades of digital now. I've lived through pretty much the start to finish in this realm. When I started, it was a lava crown. It wasn't a full contour zirconia crown. Again, that shift. So we're going to see that more and more. Again, digital dentistry, or are we just doing restorative dentistry now with digital tools? Technicians, in my mind, everybody that works in the lab is contributing to this case, this patient's restoration. Everybody's a technician along the way. We can do a ton of things with digital technologies. Full dentures, do single units, partial denture frameworks, full titanium bars for implant cases. There's a ton of different things that are available to us with digital technology. So we've talked about the opportunity that CAD/CAM presents. We've talked about implant growth. There's so much things we could think of and innovate and just be filled with this excitement. But there might be one limiting factor when it comes to implant dentistry. And on the restorative side, that is everything we do in implant dentistry is tied to a scan body in the end. On the intraoral scan, it's tied to a scan body. In the laboratory, it's tied to a scan body. Your restorative options for these patients are limited to what the scan body provides through the library services. So most cases, everything was tied to 1 or 2 options with the scan body. Well, there's a lot more restorative options in implant dentistry than a tie base, or one type of tie base. And that's where, when we went down the path of how we want to develop a new library for this industry and what it could offer, we had to think beyond. We surveyed our customers. We'll talk about how we incorporated Temp cylinders into our library and at various heights and the things you could do with them. That came straight from a customer of mine that I was talking to on the phone and was really excited that I was making progress on this library. He said, throw the temp cylinders in there. I said, why not? We can do that. And then he said, well, wait, I'm going to need 3 different heights because I don't always have the same interocclusal space on every case. Well, let's figure out a way to do it. So what we tried to do when we created this library is create the most restorative options available to the clinician, the technician, the restorative team to treat these patients, to create an experience for this patient in the chair when their restoration is delivered, and to create value all the way along the supply chain to that patient. So direct to interface with the new library, 1 scan body. You have the digital analog if it's used intraorally for your 3D printed or milled models. You have 3 options for a tie base with an OEM style geometry screw. So they could use their Unigrip driver, their 050 hex, whatever the implant type is, that's the type of screw they're going to get with these options. You got your engaging short at 4.5 millimeters, your engaging tall at 6 millimeters when you need more space, and your non-engaging options for your bridge work. You also have the opportunity, when an implant's not an ideal placement, to use the dynamic or angle correction option. This has been huge, especially when tied to 1 scan body, and especially if the clinician is doing the intraoral scan. So the dentist is going to go in, place this scan body in, and I've seen this, and send it to the lab and say, make a restoration. Well, the technician will get it, access hole's not in the right place, or you can go back and say scan with a different scan body, or you have the option to just change the tie base within the library to get the same aesthetic result that you wanted in the first place. We have 3 different heights, engaging, non-engaging. Talk about the temp cylinders. Every implant type in the library has 6 options for temp cylinders. 3 different heights for engaging, 3 different heights for non-engaging. We'll get into the different applications of those. Multi-units, you're all on 4 cases. New library, 1 scan body for the multi-unit. You got your digital analog for your 3D printed models, your milled models. You have your short tie base, your tall tie base. Again, all of them with the OEM style screw. So Straumann, SRA, you get an SRA screw with this, or can use the SRA screw. You got no bell, you're using Unigrip. BioHorizons, 050. Making it easier for your clinician because they don't need a special driver in these type of cases. Again, even with multi-units, we'll see access channels where they shouldn't be, or where they're going to compromise the aesthetics or function of the case. Go ahead and correct the angles. With dynamic, you're going to be able to correct the access channel 30 degrees in any direction you want. Temp cylinders for multi-unit. We'll get into some really cool applications when we look at different ways we could do provisionals using these temp cylinders for multi-unit or all on 4, all on X cases. Flexibility of the library. The scan body could be used intraorally or in the laboratory. It's the same scan body, same library. So when we talk about flexibility, we talked about 19% of dentists are scanning intraorally on their cases and sending those digital impressions off. Well, there's still 81% sending a traditional impression. But to me, it doesn't matter where the impression comes from as long as it's accurate. It comes down to what's the end result and what could you provide the patient. And that's again tied to, with implant dentistry, whatever scan body you use to scan this case in. So, out of these, which experience is better for the patient? Left or the right? Which is then better for the office? Which is better for the laboratory? Scan body for the new library, it's blue in color for the implant fixtures, and we'll have dimples. On the multi-unit, it's flat, and this shows silver, but it's kind of a brownish color, almost like these chairs in this room. Workflow flexibility is extremely important to me in this industry, especially when we looked at some of those statistics earlier. on people wanting to grow their client base, number one, or their offerings to their current customers. So if you're already serving a dentist who's doing one type of restoration with your laboratory, how do you increase services? You got to be versatile, you got to be flexible, and you got to work with them and establish a relationship that works for the whole restorative team. So some cases, dentists still may prefer to do a traditional impression. Great. Some cases, they may prefer, single units maybe, to do an intraoral scan. Fantastic. All the options are still available. So there's a purpose of these dimples or flats. They relay both the connection of the implant, but they also, on the angled access channels, relay which direction the tie base will be facing for that angulated screw channel. And that's either the dimple or the flat you want on the buccal or facial surface when you scan. So that'll tell you the direction of the access channel at the degree you want is going to come out the lingual side. We can see this is the 3D rendering of how the scan body lines up to the digital analog in the tie base. We get to look at every option like this right now. So these are the multi-unit options, again, just to see all the options out there and how they align to the scan. Scan body, tie base, temp cylinders at 3 different heights. Talk about the dynamic again, scan with the flat on the buccal side, angled access channels now coming out the lingual. Implant level, same thing. On your engaging cases, access channels coming out on the lingual side if your dimple is scanned on the buccal or facial side. So by how you position the scan body on the analog or in the implant in the mouth will determine some control of where the access channel could be placed. 3 different dynamic heights, both engaging and non-engaging aligned to the scan body. And then the temp cylinder options. Again, engaging options, temp cylinder single unit cases. This can be used for custom healing abutments, temporaries, non-engagings. You use verification jigs on full arch cases, temporary bridges, a lot of different applications because there's a whole lot of different materials out there now that we can choose from with CAD/CAM dentistry. Talk a little bit about the digital analog and why we designed it the way we did. We evaluated multiple analogs that were available at the time already on the market. And the number one thing that came up is how do you make it simple, self-guided, and know it's in the right position? So for us, we thought the taper body was perfect. Taper body, self-guiding into place. It'll drop right in the printed model. One flat on it. One flat to prevent any rotation in the model. And 2 vertical stops. So you'll know the analog is fully seated in the model. And the last feature we did, just to make sure, is a security screw. When this screw stops, you know the analog is at the lowest vertical position and it's in the right position in your 3D model, your milled model, your 3D printed model. And the nice thing is those little screws on the bottom, it's just one size across all the analogs we offer. Less inventory if you keep them out on hand. You see it in the design software. This is Exocad Model Creator. Okay. You can see the features of the analog, the flat aligned with the connection. This is where the security screw is going to be. And then that's the 3D rendering of the print job coming out. Analog in the proper position, security screw coming in to fix the analog in place on your model. So, real quick, this is a 3D printed model. Actually, I think we have this one at the booth if you go by. It has all the different options on it, but we'll show how quickly the analog self-guided into place. Flip over the model, bring in the security screw. Now you have a master cast off an intraoral scan if you want it. Screws fully seated, analog in place. A couple photos here of some final models we did. Easy, clean. It's multi-unit, so this is off a full arch intraoral scan. Be able to generate these models. This is extremely important to me. When we built this library, we wanted to make it as easy as possible to determine what parts and pieces you're working with. I've worked with a bunch of different libraries. Some of them are foreign languages to me. Some of them will read code 101, 302. And then you have to go to a reference sheet, find out what that is. Then they'll throw in some other numbers and descriptions, and they don't match. You just want to know what implant type it is and what tie base you're using. That's what we did. When we built the library, you know what tie base you're using, what part you have in front of you, what it is. No more calling your supplier saying, hey, what is this? I need to figure it out, and I'm already behind. These are all the options shown fully written out in both softwares, Exocad and 3Shape. You get in there, you ordered the part already, or even if you didn't, you pick what part you want, design your restoration, and order it after you're done designing. Tie bases we talked about with the OEM style geometry screw. So it's a screw that's the exact shape and size of the OEM suppliers and uses the same drivers. I have those available with a tie base that's 4.5 millimeters tall. If you have more interocclusal space, you can use the 6 millimeter tall. And for your crown and bridge work, we have the 4.5 millimeter tall, non-engaging option. We see in the Exocad software the difference between the 4.5 and the 6 millimeter tall when it comes to your restorations. How much space do you have? A lot of interocclusal space, you're probably going to want to use the taller tie base. Limited space, use the shorter one. Talk about crown and bridge work. It's where the non-engaging comes in. Are you looking at the design work? Is that what that face was for? That was me. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it is quick and easy. This scan came from a denture we had in the back, and I just cut the flanges off and scanned it in for that purpose. Trust me. I'd rather have you guys doing the design work than me. Look how beautiful that is. Just think of that patient experience, right? What's that? That's what I get a kick out of. But we can talk about the guided surgery we talked about in implant dentistry. You're still going to place the implant where the bone is. So on a patient like this, is it successful guided surgery if those implants are placed there? Or is it restoratively compromised? To me, it depends on who you're asking, right? But I can tell you, the one person that wasn't asked this question is probably the patient. But the patient has the expectation that they're going to get beautiful crowns if they have 3 implants placed. They're probably spending a lot of money. They probably demand a certain result. What's their experience going to be from a situation like this? Here's a little bit better illustration. I'm curious which dentist is going to seat that and fill those access holes. So how do we take these patients who have had these cases with implants placed where they're restoratively compromised? Or maybe it wasn't planned as well. We can look at the digital application of this using the scan body, where you see the tie base coming through. Well, this is on a straight access channel, which means you're using a straight driver of some sort, whether it's 050 hex, 048, and it's a friction connection to that screw. You can't move it around. That means you got one access channel when you're designing this case. It's coming through the incisal edge. Strength and aesthetics are now compromised. That's where dynamic comes in. Again, same scan body, so the doctor didn't have to do anything different. The doctor didn't see the restoration in the design software, knowing it was compromised when they scan. So let's just switch out what tie base we're using in the software, see what we can do. With dynamic, we're going to be able to take that straight access channel and move it 30 degrees in any direction. And this is how it all works. Simple. Dynamic works because of the way the driver engages the top of the screw. It's circular. It's like a gear. We see the illustrations of inside Big Ben, these big old clocks. We'll see them with this horizontal gear turning a vertical gear. That's all we're doing. This driver's just a gear. And that's how we're able to angle it back 30 degrees. But your software has to have the right libraries in there to be able to do this. And they have to be tied to the right scan bodies. A similar case. Now, rather than having that same access channel coming through the incisal edge, in the software you design the restoration with your access channel pulled back. Aesthetics are still there. Function's still there. So what may have looked restoratively compromised to begin with is going to lead to a beautiful end result, a happy patient, and a great experience. We can look at it side by side. You could use libraries for diagnostic tools. You could send images straight from the software to your dentist. Say, hey, I can't do this with this type of tie base, but if we use the dynamic one, we can move it back and get the result everybody wants along the way. It's a case here that was done by Bill Murray, and we can see that some of these don't even need angled access channels. These are all angled access channels, but we know if those are 30 degrees, maybe they were within an area where it was going to compromise aesthetics or compromise function. But again, this is a service to the dentist, making the dentist's life easier, the dentist experience chairside. If you use one dynamic on a multi-implant case, why not use dynamic for every implant? Reason why? Now your dentist does not have to change out drivers. They don't have to worry about having another instrument there when the patient's there. See many different applications of a dynamic and the end result based off of where the implant was placed. Posterior teeth. More posterior you go, less interocclusal space you have for the driver when the patient opens their mouth. You could angle the screw channel towards the tongue, and all of a sudden you've created more space for your dentist. Might not affect the patient's end result, but now your dentist's experience is more pleasant. They're not in there fighting for space telling the patient, open wider. We see a lot of cases, these actually came straight from our design center at when I was putting this together. But typically we always say, no patient's alike, right? No one size fits all. Every restoration's different. True. Every restoration is different. Every patient is different. You have patients with 9 millimeters vertical space, patients that may have 20. I'll take that patient every day in our design center at least. But we might have a tie base component that offers the versatility for both these situations. That's the tall version. This is the dynamic tall. You could have it 9 millimeters tall, 7 millimeters tall, 5 millimeters tall. Patient dictates what size you'll use. Restoration dictates it. Here's the options. This is the same tie base. This is at 9 millimeters. That's cut down at 7, cut down at 5. Engaging component, we can see it in the different heights of restorations. Do we want a taller tie base, medium-sized tie base, short tie base? Well, you don't know till the patient's there. But, oh wait, we got one slide more. We can also see in the software, the dimples lined up, tie base is in there. This is dynamic, access channel coming out the lingual. I do want to mention one thing about the milling on these in a minute, how the milling machines will mill the restoration. Sorry, this is the embarrassing moment where I thought a slide was there and it's not there. So we'll keep talking about these tie bases and the options they provide. 9 millimeters tall, interocclusal space in the anterior. If you have it, use the 9. Use the 7 here, and 5 here. But remember, this is only one tie base. So you could keep inventories of these and just cut them down as you use them, depending on what library you select. Minimal inventory required. That's the slide I was waiting for. It's one physical tie base, but 3 options, and you have all 3 options in your design software. Let's go back and forth. Figure out what's best for that individual patient, that individual restoration. and this goes on to the milling when we talk about these tie bases. We talked about up to 30 degrees of angulation. That's on the 5mm tall or the stock short one. The angulation is at the very top part of the tie base. There's a reason for that, and that is the screw height is higher before you start driving it down. The screw height in the restoration is at its highest point when the screw engages the implant here. As you thread it down, the screw goes down more, but you have to be able to engage the top of the screw at its highest point. And as you get to the 9mm, it does limit the amount of angulation. You still get up 10, 15 degrees depending on the implant type. See it here in another restoration. Beautiful design work by myself. I know, patient's happy. I see it, right? Maybe. We'll do this one as a provisional, so that way they come back for the final. Yeah, right? Good strategy. Huh?
I'll still get yelled at for the provisional.
Here's how it works in the final restoration. You got your tie base. It's 9mm tall. Well, it could just be cut down with the disc at 7mm or 5mm. 9mm tall. This is cut down to the 7mm mark. Again, 9mm tall. Cut down to the 5mm mark. We can see it here on a real case. Application in the posterior, right? Bicuspid, back in the molar region. Well, that one needs to be cut down, and probably that one. But notice the flare on that one coming out the buccal side. You don't see that in the final restoration thanks to the ability to angle the access channel. What about this case? Who gets to see these cases? Anybody? I get to. Our design center sees everything. Usually we see this. This implant's coming out, not even in the restoration. This is how I feel on that given day. I get my dental headache. But again, it's a challenge, so creates opportunity. How do we get better from this, right? I could probably deal with the stress when the migraines get to me, but the working in dentistry, it's a tough day. So with dynamic, you can use these on your multi-unit cases. So you get 30 degrees correction from your multi-unit already, another 30 degrees from your angled access channel using the dynamic application, and now you've been able to correct that implant placement up to 60 degrees. Again, what appears to be restoratively compromised ends in a wonderful experience for a patient. Prosthetic control is what it's about when it comes to what the end result is for the patient. This was a real case. This was in this patient's mouth. This is Mrs. Jones. This is a case done at the University of West Virginia. This is how she came in and presented. 5 implants. Full arch case. What do you think Mrs. Jones paid for that? Exactly. So, using the dynamic tie bases, we're able to move those back. There is one thing about this case that I'll say, and I don't say too much about implant companies or different options out there, but this case was done on Straumann tissue level implants. So some people might have said, hey, why not throw a multi-unit on there? For a Straumann tissue level implant, you cannot find an angulated multi-unit. They do not exist. And that's why dynamic had to be used on this case. And I can tell you Mrs. Jones is still smiling today from it. Her life is different because of this tie base option. Again, another real case. It's all in the prosthetic control you have. You can see the access channel here, here. With dynamic, nothing's compromised. Function's not, aesthetics aren't. Different end result. I would love to take credit for this, but this was done by my friend Robert Backer, so I can't. Sorry, I didn't design that one. The temp cylinder options in the library. This is where things get fun. Why not have temp cylinders? Well, they're a machine component. You can put them in a library. Let's do it. So we can talk about provisional restorations. We talk about taking a temporary provisional denture and converting it on an all-on-4. Now, implants are placed. And there's nothing wrong with this procedure, by the way. This is from Spear, so I know they did it right. This was one of the coolest things I saw when I uncovered this article a couple of years ago, was doing a suck down over the provisional, using that in the mouth because it's clear, creating a guide of where you're going to alter the denture for these temp cylinders when they're connected intraorally. Placed back over the provisional, holes are cut out for the temp cylinder, luted in the mouth, marking where we're going to cut out the palate, the flanges, and finally the deliver of the provisional the same day of implant placement. So the question I would have had on that procedure is, how long did all of that take after the implants were placed? Go from taking the provisional, finding out where the access channels are going to be, cutting them out, altering the denture, cutting the flanges off, polishing. And I know there are some efficient technicians and clinical teams that can do that pretty efficiently, but it's probably going to take some time. So why not send the patient home for the evening, bring them back tomorrow, and deliver something different? So what your clinicians could do if they have that intraoral scanner, or if they take a physical impression, doesn't matter, pour the model or take the scan, use your design software and create a provisional with temp cylinders in it. Milled provisional, temp cylinder. It's a little bit different fit than you're going to get by coring out a processed acrylic provisional. It's a pretty good fit. I did design that one. I'll take credit for my work when it's out there. Those are my hands too. We have a running joke in the office. Every time they make me film something, I say, hey, look at the hands of the angel. Just kidding. My hands are terrible. That's why I never worked at the bench. I'm happy you guys do what you do. Same thing as we saw with the taller tie base. It's only one temp cylinder. So you stock these. You just have 3 options when you go to design each case. Cut it down at the undercuts here, and cut it down at the undercut there. Every second undercut. Illustration here showing it's 10.5 millimeters tall. Could be cut down to 8, 5.5 in the posterior when you have limited space. Result, reduced inventory, but you have inventory on hand for these provisional cases that come in. Design work of the provisional, using the temp cylinders in the software, how the library is, how it's going to mill out, free of the undercuts, allowing the temp cylinder to fall right into place afterwards. See the short, when you have less vertical, and this is a medium height. And that's the provisional that could be delivered straight to the patient rather than taking a temporary denture or provisional denture and doing the work to create that. Save time, efficient, better end result. Talk about verification jigs. We see a lot of verification jigs. There's many ways to make them, many ways. Different types of resins. What do you want to work with? A flowable coming out of a syringe. This is a light cure. But they could get messy. Probably have to grind on them. It's going to take some time. Those all-on-4 cases, don't be doing this anymore. Or you don't have to do this anymore, I should say. You could take the library and create verification jigs off an intraoral scan. So one less physical impression for your doctor and less time in the laboratory to create a verification jig. This is just using the bar module on Exocad or 3Shape. Section it up, put it on your provisional model so they know where each one's placed that you printed from that intraoral scan, send it off to your doc. This is what you can present them. They put it in the mouth, they lute it together, they take the final impression from that. Again, one less impression for that patient experience. That's what it all relates to. Talk about some of the new things coming beyond this that we're working on. These are called Scanalogs. So another option you have in the laboratory. Doctor prefers to take a physical impression, great. Why pour a model when we can put our printers to use? Use a scan analog, it's a reverse analog that goes in, and you scan the impression. Temp cylinder is in place on an all-on-4 case. Scan analogs are put in position, send it to the scanner. So workflow, we're working on 3 shapes, not yet perfected, but we can do it. It's just a little bit of a pain. So you take it in your 3-shape software, you got your scan body, do a line, populates where your analogs are, model's done, model creator, go through the process. These are your analogs. This was generation 1, we now have generation 2, which you saw earlier. But you could be creating a model and doing the restoration or verification jig at the same time. See the model work again, where the analogs will be positioned in the cast. You put whatever cool writing you want on it. If you go by the booth after this and see some of these models or restorations we have out there, there's one that says Wizard on it. Somebody put it on there as a joke, but whatever you want to identify that model work, you can do that in the softwares. And again, tie bases are populated off those scanalogs. So the restorative technician could be working on the restoration as the model's being printed. This was just a simple bar. Again, beautiful design by me, I know. And there you go. You got model work, analogs, and a restoration ready to go back to your doctor. So when we look at these libraries and the options we have, we can talk about a bunch of different things. But one thing I know choice is flexible. Did you get the impression or did you get an intraoral scan? Really doesn't matter. Where does the workflow start? Material choice. You're doing provisionals. You're using zirconia, peat, pecton. Whatever you're using, use the right component for that material. You're doing a 3D printed model or are you doing a milled model? Doesn't matter. Versatility. Again, I like to talk about this tie base in particular being the most versatile tie base there is. You get angle correction up to 30 degrees. You get 3 different heights. Use it. Stock less inventory, have it available, faster restorations with the results that aren't compromised. Restorative control, that's what it's about. What is the patient going to get? What's the end result? How does it relay back to all the things we talked about earlier, the challenges we're facing, and how can we continue to add value along the way? Simplicity. Easy to read library, 1 scan body. It's simple, it's quick. And it doesn't stop. This is just one thing we have in the pipelines. There are these scan analogs for this option in library. There's a couple more coming. Hopefully they'll be out later this year. We're really excited about it. What we learned last year through those challenges, again, challenge, while we were trying to build and develop a bigger, better library, is it led us to what can we do next? What can we do next? There are some really exciting things along the way. And then there's going to be some more exciting things on the removable side using these types of libraries that we're really excited about. We're not stopping. You guys don't have to stop. Every restoration's different. Which component are you going to use? Again, I said earlier today, digital dentistry is now just dentistry. It's an aspect of dentistry, whether it's digital restorative dentistry, whether it's practicing dentistry as a clinician. Are they practicing digital dentistry or are they just practicing dentistry? So every restoration is different. You've got to have the tools available for the final result, for that patient experience. What are they going to be smiling about when they leave the office? So, patient smiling when they leave the office, the laboratory is probably going to get another case. Make the restoration for the patient, grow the lab. And it's all about the patient, again. It's the experience that they have determines how much work the office is getting and how much work the lab is getting. But at the end result, the human experience is what determines the value we provide through the work we do. Oh, lastly, I'll talk about one thing, and that's unique ability. This is something I read about in a book 2 years ago. And the definition of unique ability is when passion and talent act as a core focus. So I've done a lot of different things in dentistry, and that's been a core focus of mine, but I'm passionate about what I do, even though my design skills aren't up to par. But I could do a lot of things, or we can do a lot of things, if we continue to focus on core focus and passion working together. And that is me. I had a fun day that day. Yeah, my dad enjoyed taking that picture. So, whatever you guys choose to do, or however you choose to restore, we're right here for you. Our value to you is our connection leading to solutions, confidence, growth, and partnership. We're here to support in any way we can and allow you guys to deliver that experience to your dentist that's passed on to the customer. It's a great time to be a dental professional. I thank you for your time today. Wow, we're out of here early.